Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good lunchtime. I don't know, depending on what your time zone is. I'm on the East Coast, so it is noon. Thanks for showing up today during the day. I know I got a few emails asking if we could do this session at night. I did this particular webinar about 2 weeks ago at night. So we do try and alternate, but depends what other things are going on, how many nighttime events we can do. But we definitely have nighttime events. Some of the more nighttime events coming up in the next month or so are going to have to do with student loans, which probably don't relate to most of the people here yet, and essays, and that will relate to you guys. So those will be evening events. But anyhow, to get started today, I was going to talk to you about and teach you about the common data set. For people who are here, if you don't mind, love to know where you're Zooming from, how many or what year in high school your student is, and if you've looked at the common data set before, if you know anything about it. To me, I mean, some people do. They just they probably have friends or they stumble upon an article that talks about it. I think it's a great hidden secret if you don't know about it. It's a lot of good data. So that's why I wanted to go over it today. Great. You have sophomore twins. Don't call yourself clueless. I think you're great that you're here and you have sophomores. So this is a good time to learn. So it looks like another sophomore, 2027, twin 2028. Oh, I know you parents with multiples. It's an exciting but a tough time to deal with two students at the same time going through college admissions. Just getting started about all of this. Know nothing about the common data set. Okay. Well, I'm glad some people do know a little bit about the common data set and some don't know anything. So this will be a good eye opener for you. I might talk a little fast. I really have to be finished by 1. Sometimes I can go over, but I will try and fit in as much as I can. This is recorded. This is just my little housekeeping stuff. We will send the link tomorrow. It's an email. And please put your comments or questions in the chat. I will try and look over at them as I go through the slides. I'm going to go through some slides, and then I'm going to jump to show you some actual common data sets, walk through the data, and then I'm going to show you a tool that we have that makes it all simpler if you don't want to do all of the kind of primary research by yourself. Okay, so let me get to my slides. And share those. Okay. Let me share. And if you guys, somebody can just say in chat that you can see my slides, that would be helpful. Just want to make sure that it's visible. Great, thank you. Okay, so I already mentioned the agenda. We're going to talk about what the common data set is. I'll give you a little bit of background, but we don't have to spend that much time there. And then I'm going to actually show you some common data sets and talk through the data. So I meant to look this up. I don't even honestly know what year this started in, the actual common data set. It must have been 20 years or so ago because it was the impetus for US News and World to create their rankings. So they, a while ago, asked all the colleges, can you fill out all this information for us? This is information that also goes to the government, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But the U.S. News and World Report wanted it all and to themselves, and they wanted more information that the government asked for. So there's some information in the common data set that does not go to the government. And they said in exchange, we're going to create this ranking system. At the time, people thought it was a good thing. Of course, over the years, we've come to not like it. And in exchange for you giving us the data, we're going to publicize about your college. We're going to create this thick, magazine. Back in the day of the magazines, when we would see it on the newsstand and people would buy it. And that was kind of the original start for getting this data and why colleges, started sharing it. And as the name implies, and I'm going to show you different common data sets from different colleges. It is a common format for the most part, and it is a common set of data that colleges share. So it's, the perfect data set that U.S. News and World Report wanted to create their rankings. So in addition to U.S. News and World Report, the other two organizations that get the primary information related to all common data sets is the College Board. They're also part of this. I honestly don't know the history of how they got involved, but they actually manage a group where people from colleges can ask questions to clarify what information they should be sharing. I think they even might put out some of the formats of the common data set. So anyhow, they are involved. And another company, a private company called Peterson's, is also involved. And they are the source if you're a outside company like myself and a lot of other companies who want college data for your website. You go to Peterson's and they license the data, which is, again, primarily from the common data set. So they are playing the role of compiling all the data, cleaning it, putting it in a format so that other sources can then use that data. We use them through APIs. That's a big role that Peterson's plays. They also hold all the historical data for common data sets going back several years. Of course, on individual college websites, you can see that too. But again, Peterson's is a source, one source that companies can go to license the data and use it in mass. So just some quick pros and cons of the common data set is that it tends to be colleges collect the information starting in late fall. I'm going to actually also talk to you about the timing of the data because it's important for you to know that. And they start collecting it in late fall and through winter. They are just starting now, individual colleges, to share their latest common data set information. And then again, kind of in mass, a lot of websites update their data, usually over the summer, because it's just, it's a little bit of a time lag between when the colleges start to share their information, and then a company like Peterson's has to compile it, and then they send it out to the websites, and then it's usually by, midsummer that most websites have what is the most up-to-date common data set information, and I'll explain what data that information actually includes. Most colleges share their common data set publicly. So if you wanted to see an individual college's common data set, which we're going to pull up, all you need to do is Google the name of the college. I'm going to show you Tulane, so you could Google Tulane common data set, and most likely it will bring you to the page on the college's website that has their latest common data set and probably like 5 years in the past links to the prior common data sets. So that's great. The hard thing is that you can't, there's no central source unless there are some websites where you can go to and kind of look at all the common data sets across all the colleges. So you have to kind of individually, if you're like a solo researcher, individually pick which colleges you want to Google and research, and that's the way you can see their individual colleges' common data set. It's much harder. You're not going to go and look at 300 common data sets or 3,000 common data sets, which there are for the number of colleges out there. That's just a much bigger task. And oh, I have a little typo there. That should say postings. You can look at if there are historical information, you could start to see trends over time. The slight con is that even though I said most colleges share their CDSs publicly, there are a handful that do not. One of the most famous ones, and they're not doing well in the press these days, is Columbia. And this was a few years ago. Actually, they've never shared their common data set publicly. And I think when they finally did a few years ago share publicly, there were some errors in their data, which is still unclear if they were, purposeful, manipulations of the data, or they were pure mistakes. But so that's kind of a well-known situation. And there's another handful of colleges that for whatever reason, just don't share their information publicly. There's nothing that forces a college that they have to have it publicly on their website. It's just that most do. So you'll find, here and there a few that do not share publicly. But for websites that license the data from Peterson's, we get everybody's common data set because their colleges are all sending it into Peterson's, even if they're not sharing it publicly. Another con, and this is actually for data, for all college data, is there's really no checks on the accuracy. And that's kind of what you can, that's kind of what I just mentioned in terms of the issue that happened with Columbia. The reason why we eventually knew that there was a error or a misleading of the information is because somebody spoke up, I guess, who puts together the data and said it was inaccurate. But there's just, colleges share their information with the government. Nobody can really double check and say, is your information accurate or not? And again, colleges share the information in their common data sets, but we really honestly don't have any way of knowing whether it's accurate. I don't think anything is usually purposeful, but sometimes there just are mistakes. So if something looks really strange or out of whack, I always say, bring it to the attention of the college, because there legitimately might have been a mistake, or they might have misunderstood what that field was supposed to represent. So somebody's asking, can you move your small screen blocking some information? Oh, that screen, sorry. Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry, didn't realize that. Okay. Let's see. I think that's about enough on this screen. Somebody's asking, what is IPEDS? So let me think. I don't know if I have a slide on that. No. Okay, so let me just tell you what IPEDS is the name for the government data source. You can actually, again, Google IPEDS. Their user-facing website that to give you access to IPEDS is something called the College Navigator. I hate to say this. This has just been rumor, but I haven't seen evidence yet. But we don't know how long that data might be available with everything that's going on with the government. In the circles of higher ed, people have been saying, if you want any data from IPEDS, you better download it now, because it's not clear how much longer that data will be there. That's one issue. The second is, and this has always been an issue, the data that is in IPEDS definitely has a lag time. It's a little older than common data set. Again, this is before any of the issues that we are seeing now with the government. The government was always slow to update their data, so it was usually like 18 to 20 months old, the data. But it's still a decent source of information. We use it sometimes, and it kind of collaborates with the common data set. So it's, again, public information, just a little bit more difficult to access en masse. If you have to really feel comfortable downloading data and then manipulating it and pulling data together from different data sets. It's doable, but the average person just usually doesn't feel comfortable. The average person can go to College Navigator, but they don't usually get the data directly from IPEDS. Okay, so let me just give you a quick timing of this data. So right now, and actually I'm starting to see that the latest common data set, which is technically called for 2024-2025, is starting to come out. So that's good, but it's trickling out from some schools. And again, as I mentioned before, we'll kind of get it in mass over the summer. But all schools have their 2023-2024 common data set out. Let me tell you what the numbers represent. So the first number, the 2023, represents the fall of the year that the students are enrolling for which the data is collected for. So just think about it as a logical process. There's actually an office on college campuses called the Office of Institutional Research. They are usually the ones who are responsible for all this data. They do a lot of data crunching for all parts of colleges. And they can't collect this information for students until the students actually enroll, right? So they're not, all of this information is based on enrolled students, who enrolled in this particular fall. So this past fall was the fall of 2024. If I work in the Office of Institutional Research, I can't start collecting the information from all the other offices on campus until A, the students enroll, and B, there's at least like a few months for those offices to get their data together so that they can send it to the bigger Office of Institutional Research. So that's what usually happens in the fall, and then the Office of Institutional Research is gathering all their information and cleaning it and putting it into the appropriate buckets, and that's what they're usually doing in the winter time. So again, going back to the example here, the common data set for 2023-2024 is for students, freshmen and undergraduates who enrolled in the fall of 2023. So it's covering the academic year of 2023-2024. But if you think about it, the admissions data that is going to be in the common data set is for those students who enrolled in the fall of 2023. Those students who enrolled in the fall of 2023 went through the admissions process in the fall, winter, spring of 2022 to 2023. So just keep that in mind. People always want to know, oh, well, for example, the admission season is just about to finish, right? So for this year, for 2024, 2025, like, don't we want the latest data? Sure, of course, we want it, but we just can't get it from everybody because everybody doesn't, share it like immediately when the season ends. That's one thing. And the second, although that you'll see some, like maybe, some slight surprises from some colleges, overall, if you look at admissions data from year to year, there's really minor changes. You will see changes like over a 5 to 10 year period, but from year to year, things kind of just inch up or down. You're not seeing dramatic changes. So the fact that you're looking at admissions data from the 2023-2024 common data set, which really represents the admissions season of 2022-2023, you're not going to have major surprises. And actually, and the other thing is, that's the data that everybody is looking at. So, you have, quote, the most up-to-date data. It's just not the season that just ended. Okay, sorry. I hope that might be confusing, but I always just think it's important to know what you're actually looking at when you're looking at the data. Okay, so I'm going to jump right after this. And I mentioned I was looking at Tulane's. It just so happened this is what you would do if you Googled, if you actually Googled Tulane and the words common data set, you would click on the link and it will bring you to the Tulane's webpage that shares all of their common data set. They do have their most latest one, 2024-2025, which is great. And then you can see that they show you some past common data sets if you want to, kind of look, maybe if you want to look in general, but if there might be a particular field that you're interested in, you want to kind of like see what they've done in the past, you can pull it up. Okay, let me go and, let me get out of this, and I'm going to stop sharing and pull up Tulane's common data sets. Okay, let me share again. Okay, sorry, just if somebody can give me a thumbs up to make sure that you are seeing my screen properly. And somebody, oh, great, thanks. So somebody's asking, has anybody tried to consolidate college common data sets of your choice using AI? People have tried to use AI to kind of do their college research. The issue is, I'm not quite sure yet how good AI is at looking into these are PDFs of like finding the PDFs and actually looking at that data. I mean, if this was data that was shared on websites, it might be better. I mean, you can give it a try. When we have tried it, we spend as much time making sure that the data, that it's accurate what they're telling us, versus kind of like using other sources that we know are better. So we use AI a lot for lots of things, so I would definitely give it a try. I just don't know yet, and maybe we'll do some digging into it, how accurate the data is that it's going to share with you. But so anyhow, that's just my quick opinion. So, okay, here's when you do Google Tulane and Common Data Set. This is what you get in the Google results. And then, and this is what I showed you before. And then I'm just going to click on the 2024-2025 Common Data Set. And I'm going to scroll through the sections and point out pieces of data that I think is interesting. There's a lot of data here. There's a lot of stuff that you might find interesting that I might point out. So feel free to dig in and look at anything you're interested in. I'm going to increase the size. Hopefully that's better. And helps you see things a little bit. So I think these sections are numbered by letters. I think it goes up to F, maybe G, and each section has a particular purpose. Again, this is part of the common format of this. And I'm not going to go through every section. I'm going to point out those sections that I think are most important, but I might have to scroll through a few just to get to some of the more interesting ones. Okay. The section A, just what the title says, it's general information. It's, names of people who you might want to contact, addresses, that type of stuff. What type of academic calendar year they use, which actually could be important for some schools to know whether they're on a trimester, a quarter, or semester basis. What degrees that they offer. Obviously most people are looking for colleges that are doing the bachelor's, but you might want to see what graduate degrees that they're also offering as well. Okay, section B is they call enrollment and persistence. So here's if you're ever confused about what data is really being shared, this is the line. Oh, it's not actually highlighting, but it's that second line that says provide numbers. This is actually the instructions that people who have to fill out the common data set, this is their instructions. So it says provide numbers of students for each of the following category as of the institution's official fall reporting date or as of October 15th, 2024. So now you know that all the data that's basically in this report is for students who enrolled in the fall of 2024. So if, again, ever confused, come to section B and you'll see what the date is. And so this shows, obviously, total number of undergraduates broken out by male and female. And they show graduate students as well. This might be interesting. Sometimes people want to know of all of the students on campus, how many are graduate versus undergraduate students, because that might give you a sense of where the institution is putting their emphasis. So these numbers are helpful to look at. Also part-time, obviously Tulane is mainly a full-time school, so there's very, very few students who are here part-time. So that's important information. And then they have information listed by who enrolled, their ethnicity. Again, this can no longer be asked as part of the admissions process, but it can be asked once the students enroll. So this gives you a sense of the diversity or lack of diversity on the campus. And let's see. Oh, this is the persistence is really like obviously how many students are coming back. So we look at a statistic, basically, retention rate, what percentage of sophomores returned from freshman year, which is important to know. So that we get that from there. And then let's go a little further down. And here, okay, now we're into section C, which is going to be important to you. Section C is important, and then there's a section H, which is very important. So this is admissions data. So this is now going to share with you how many students applied, how many students were accepted, and how many students enrolled. This is where a lot of the data, websites get their admissions data. And it's also broken down by male versus female. Sometimes websites show you that, sometimes they don't. I picked Tulane for a few different reasons. One is you can actually see and I don't particularly know, the specific reasons, but over the years, a lot more women and women in general are going to school at a higher rate than men to college, but Tulane in particular, higher than the average. A higher number of females apply to Tulane versus male. And you can see it right there in the numbers. It's, almost a little less than double. So 20,000 women applied versus 12,000 men. And then you can see that's also somewhat reflected in the students who they admitted. They admitted, again, definitely more women, 2,700 versus men, 1,800. And then you can see who enrolled. So Tulane definitely has, I don't want to say it's an issue, but they definitely, it's definitely the campus leans female. And I point this out because this might, and what you're going to find, what I always like in data in general, not just for colleges, but just, in life, it's fun to pick through data and maybe see little insights and it's like a puzzle piece. So what this is saying is that Tulane obviously has more women on campus than men. And if you're a male applying to Tulane, that might give you an advantage because they probably want to increase. They probably want to equalize that number over time. So you would, if we broke it out, and I haven't, what the acceptance rate is for men versus women, it might be a little higher. My guess is it probably is higher if you're a man applying to Tulane because they want to get those numbers up. You might see the opposite at other types of schools. The last time I did this presentation, somebody put in the chat that it's just the opposite, obviously, at MIT. They have more men applying, and so maybe the acceptance rate for women is a little higher. The same thing at maybe some of the other engineering school, like Rochester Institute of Technology. So, this is just little clues that depending on which side of the gender you are, it might help you. Okay, somebody said, I just read The Anxious Generation. It discusses the reasons and data behind more women attending college versus men. Very insightful. I've heard a little bit about that book, The Anxious Generation. And if you want to share one or two insights here to let us know, I'd love to know why they believe that women are attending more than men, or basically the opposite, why men are not wanting to attend as much as women. So feel free to share. I'd love to hear anything that you learned. Okay, here's another piece of information. Again, probably not going to be as valuable during the research and application process, but might be valuable when your student gets accepted or is put on the wait list. This shows you how many students were put on the wait list. And when your student is asked to be put on the wait list or told that they are on the wait list, they get the choice to accept or not. So they could say, thanks, I have other offers. I'm just not even going to, don't put my name on the wait list because I'm going to, consider some of my other offers instead. Versus some students obviously want to be on the wait list. It's their decision. So Tulane put, or basically accepted about 4,200 students onto their wait list. Of those 4,200, about 2,200 said, okay, I want to stay on the wait list, keep my place. And of those 2,200, they ended up asking or admitting 432 off of the wait list. I got to say, I'm not quite sure. I think the admitting here is just Tulane going back and saying, okay, we now have a spot for you if you want to come. I don't think the 432 meant that all 432 enrolled, but I'm going to clarify that. I think this is just Tulane going back and saying, okay, we can give you an official offer. So again, just a little insight into what happens. It doesn't mean that every year, particularly for waitlist information, that's going to happen. In fact, if my student was on the waitlist, I would go back 2 or 3 years to see what happens. Every prior year might impact the following year's waitlist. How students yield, that's a term meaning, how many of the students who were given an offer actually decide to come. It's obviously going to impact how many students they take off of the wait list. So just because whatever percentages here are not given that are going to happen next year, but it's just a clue as to how many students in general they choose to even put on the wait list. Okay, here's another piece of information that says the high school units required or recommended. I always get this question a lot, particularly for foreign language. Does my student really need 3 years of a foreign language? Well, you don't need to kind of like ask, because the source is the common data set. Of course, you can also ask the admissions reps directly, but come to that college's common data set, and they are telling you right here, foreign language, the student needs 3 units, 3 years of foreign language. Whatever the college shares here, they're probably not going to budge from. So again, this is kind of a good source to know, or good resource to use to really know how many years of a particular academic course your student needs. I think I had actually looked up Dartmouth's, and I think that they actually are asking for 4 years. So you can see how each school and knowing these requirements are really important. And if your students are sophomores, even looking now to get a sense, it's important. So you know what level of foreign language, how many years of social studies your student might need, and you know it now, so you can help them plan out the rest of their high school academic courses. Okay, next section. So this is technically called, this section here is called academic factors. And they break it up into, this is called admissions factors, and they break it up into academic and non-academic. Again, this is like a blueprint. This is what the admissions office is using as their kind of rubrics to look at applications. So these are the different characteristics or factors they are looking at when they evaluate students. Again, broken up by academic and non-academic. All the academic ones, rigor of the class, the classes that your student takes, that's usually always going to be marked as very important. Class rank is important, although that's kind of, I think it's important if your high school ranks. So many high schools don't rank these days. So even though they say it's important, if they don't have the data, they can't use it. GPA is important. So you can see for Tulane, the top most important factors are all related to how well that student is performing at their high school. And then standardized tests, they are saying are important, but they're not very important. The essay is important, but it's not very important. And recommendations are important. They're basically telling you, when they're looking at your student's application, test scores, how hard the classes are that they took, that's the most important thing. And yes, test scores are important, but how your student did in high school is more important to Tulane than the actual test scores, as an example. And then in terms of non-academic, you could actually see extracurricular activities are important, volunteer work is important. One of the things I wanted to point out is this line that says level of applicant's interest. Another term you might have read or seen a lot about, it's called demonstrated interest. And to some schools, this is important. And what this is saying is they basically are tracking through a few different ways, which I'll give you examples, how interested your student might be. Are they opening emails? I mean, in this day and age of technology, colleges have a lot of ways to assume or make assumptions about how interested your student is. Are they opening emails? Is one of them. Are they clicking in the emails? That's another one. Have they attended even a virtual information session? Did they meet with the rep when the rep went to their school? Did you, as a family, or even your student, come visit the school? So these are all different ways that the college is determining your student's level of interest. For some schools, that's not important. And for some schools, if you looked at this chart, you might see level of applicants' interest as considered or not considered. And they're basically, they're saying we might be marketing to you, but we're not even going to look about the interactions that you're having with the college. It's just not important to us. But for some colleges, it is. I've never seen a college say it's very important, but quite honestly, if it's important to the college, it's going to be listed in this important column. So that Tulane is saying level of applicants' interest is important to them. It means that your student should show some interest. It doesn't mean you have to go on a college tour and visit the college in person, but your student has to have demonstrated that they are interested in Tulane, again, by maybe reaching out every time that the student interacts with the admissions office, they're taking note of that. Yeah, again, the easiest one is your student opening the emails. They might even be, as your student, I know everyone gets a ton of mail, but are they opening the physical mail? Because there might be something in the physical mail that kind of directs them to do something online. So if Tulane, as an example, or if your student is interested in a particular college and they say that level of applicants' interest is important, I would find ways to demonstrate that to them. I'm going to jump for a second just to show you something that's different. I think I have Dartmouth up because I was looking at it earlier. I do. Okay. And let's go to that same section on Dartmouth, just because I think it was different. Just again, to show you a comparison. Okay, here it is. Oh, right here. Okay, let me enlarge this. Okay, so this was Dartmouth, and here, just to show you, here's the academic. They said everything is very important to them. So, and class rigor, GPA, test scores. Dartmouth was one of the first schools to go back and require test scores. So they're kind of saying, yes, now it's very important to us. Usually all the schools that obviously have tests required are going to say test scores are important. You're going to see some schools that say test scores are optional, but they'll still mark it as important. And some schools that are test scores are optional and they'll mark it as considered. To me, I mean, that they're kind of, again, kind of giving you a little bit more insight and saying, some schools, it's test optional, but they'd still prefer to see a test score. And some schools are test optional and they are truly are test optional. And, whether you whether your student submits a test score or not, is probably not going to make a big impact. So here, again, these factors are slightly different than what you saw in Tulane's. Here's something else that's different about Dartmouth. And again, I know Dartmouth's an elite school. I just picked it because I happened to be looking at it and I saw that there were differences and wanted to show you. Character and personal qualities. Dartmouth marked that as really high. And not that I'm sure Tulane is interested in that, but they didn't mark that as very important. And I happen to know that Dartmouth, as an example, has an extra essay that they ask the student. I think they ask the student to give this or letter of recommendation to a friend to write for them, and that's their way of getting at the character and personal qualities. Or the fact that you knew that character and personal quality was important to Dartmouth, you might kind of approach, or your student might approach the essays differently to highlight some of these personal qualities, in their essays, maybe stronger than at other schools. And then do you see level of applicants' interest? Dartmouth is saying it's considered, but it's not important like Tulane. My gut is that Dartmouth's not in a location that's easy to get to, so they know that most people can't really visit, so they put that lower down. But again, just wanted to show you that these things are going to vary by college, and this is a really, I think, important section to kind of like understand how admissions officers are, kind of like what guidelines are they using to evaluate your students' applications. Okay, somebody's asking, when it says GPA, do they mean weighted, unweighted, or if the college is reweighting it? That's a good question. They generally mean unweighted. There actually is a line on the common data set that says, it asks the colleges, are you sharing, because colleges can share GPA information, are you sharing weighted or unweighted information? Majority of colleges, I'm just going to skip back to Tulane's, are sharing unweighted GPA. A few, like one or two might be sharing weighted. And then most colleges do reweight it. And I shouldn't say reweight it, they recalculate it, and they recalculate it based on the core subjects, because high schools, could be including other subjects and when they do their GPA calculation. One other thing I'll say about GPA, and I just learned this a few months ago, it always really bothered me when you look at the GPA section in the common data set, and let's see if we can find it here. I mean, it's definitely here. Let's see if I can scroll to it quickly. That's the SAT section here. Tulane is showing you a breakdown of, what percent of their students have GPAs in the 4.0 and the 3.7 to 3.9 section or range. But they don't always, let's see if oh, they did. Okay, very good. So I'm happy. Tulane is sharing an actual GPA. I think if I skip to Dartmouth, they won't share any GPA information. And it always bothered me that a lot of colleges do not share GPA information. It's probably the section that is least, filled out. And I thought maybe it was purposeful, to tell you the truth, but I actually recently spoke to a dean of admissions, and they gave me a really good explanation. So I'm going to respect their explanation. And she basically said that so many schools obviously calculate their GPAs in different ways that to really have a true apples to apples comparison where a college could compile all the GPA information and share it out with, like, the common data set and feel that they, presented the information accurately, they would be having to recalculate every student's GPA, and they just don't have the manpower to do it. So that was her reasoning why a lot of colleges don't share details about GPA. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't have the resources to properly recalculate all the students' GPA information. So, I kind of understand that, but maybe in this day and age of technology, they could, use the technology a little better to do it. Because what bothers me, I'll tell you, is that particularly if you're a test optional school, that if your student isn't submitting the test scores, then the only other academic variable they have to use to kind of see how they compare is GPA. And if the college isn't sharing their GPA numbers, it's just much harder to really know how strong your student is for that school and kind of where they fall. So that's kind of like my little beef about the GPA. So somebody's asking, is foreign languages considered a core? Yes, it usually is. Okay, so let's just go in this section here about SAT scores. So just the opposite. I kind of mentioned that, and I'm going to go quickly after this because I see I'm only having like 15 minutes left, that although colleges don't share that much GPA information, they share a ton of SAT and ACT information because basically it's standardized information and they don't really have to do anything when they get that information, it's easy to share out. So most schools have all the breakdown for their ACT, SATs. They'll give you the mean, they'll give you the median, they'll give you the different percentiles. So that's good. And it is the reason why I tell families and students when they're searching for colleges, even if they're not going to submit their test score, at least use it for the searching purposes because, again, because most colleges share so much of their test score information, it just helps you to get a sense of where you'll fall academically at that school. And if your student didn't even take a test score, I recommend families, and even for families who are, with younger students who haven't even taken any test scores yet, to take your student's GPA. And there are a few conversion tables, particularly one by Prep Scholar. If you actually just Google Prep Scholar, like GPA to ACT conversion table or GPA to SAT conversion table, they have a very nice table that says if my student had this GPA, then this is the probability of how they would score on the ACT or SAT. And then I would just create a range and use that for searching purposes. So that's just something to use for all of your searching. So this is just the breakdown of SAT information, all really good. There's one other SAT, let's see, sorry, I'm scrolling around, piece of information I wanted to share. It shows, here it is. See, submitting SAT scores and submitting ACT scores. So a few years ago in the world of test optional, this was added to the common data set, asking colleges of the students who enrolled, how many of those students actually submitted their SAT or ACT score. This is good information. It's not ideal. The ideal information would have been to know of the students who applied, how many applied using or submitting their SAT or ACT score. We don't have that information. Colleges don't share it, but they share this, which is, again, a clue into how important the test scores may be, even though the college is saying that they are test optional. So for Tulane, again, this is not statistically completely accurate, but I would kind of add these numbers because most students are not taking the SAT and the ACT. They're taking one or the other, and the majority of students, if they're submitting a test score, are not submitting two test scores. They're usually submitting just an ACT or just an SAT. So I would kind of add these up and say that 41% of students submitted a test score. These are 41% of students who enrolled had submitted a test score. So my gut is that the number of students who applied with a test score was probably higher than the 41%. Again, don't have the specifics, but just kind of giving you clues. So Tulane's test optional, you know, they're not, they are test optional. If you don't submit a test score, there are, you know, 60% of the students enrolled and didn't submit a test score. So that's pretty evident that there are a lot of students who are not submitting their scores and still getting in. But if you have a decent score, and a decent score is what I would say is probably in the higher of their 50% range, and definitely over, if your score is over in the 75th percentile, I would submit it because it just kind of will strengthen your students' overall application. Okay, now I'm going to jump really quickly to the next section, which the most important section is section H. There's other sections in between here that talk about student life and, you know, how many students are living off campus, on campus, how many students are in fraternities, sororities. That's all good information. I'm just not going to go through it right now, but you should definitely look through it. So next section, here's that student life section I just mentioned, what clubs that they have, costs, which of course are important. But the next section is about financial aid, section H. And this is all the information that shares, and this is where all the websites get their information about how much financial aid a student is getting, what percentage of students are receiving need-based financial aid, merit scholarships, what the average merit scholarship is, and what percentage of students are receiving merit scholarships. Somebody's asking, would you submit test scores if in the 25th to 50th percentile? I probably would not, unless, I have to say, unless depending on the student's social economic situation. Honestly, if your student was, you know, from a lower income family, I might, because you know, there is connections between how students score and kind of the social economic families that they come from. But so that's kind of my only caveat for when I would submit it if it was below the 50th percentile. Okay. So I'm now looking at financial aid information. I'm sorry, I'm going to go through this quickly. These are the raw numbers. What we usually do is we do the math for you to give you the percentages, but all the raw numbers are here. So the number A is number of students, number of undergraduate students, you know, for that year, number of freshman undergraduate, and then number of full-time undergraduates. Number of undergraduates or number of freshmen who applied for need-based aid. I mean, it's just interesting information. We don't really use it. But what's important is the number of students who were determined to have aid, or determined, sorry, to have need. So just because I applied for financial aid doesn't mean that the college is going to agree and say you are eligible for financial aid. So that's the difference between those numbers. You can see it's a little under half. So, you know, 1,100 students applied for financial aid, but only 662 were determined to have the need or be eligible to receive financial aid. So that's an important number to look at. And then of the students who had financial need, how many actually got money, you know, got need-based aid? In schools like Tulane, it's very high. So you can almost say 100% of the students who applied and were determined to be eligible for financial aid got financial aid. Doesn't mean they got all the financial aid they needed, but they got some financial aid. And again, for schools like, you know, Tulane, you'll see that the percentage of students who apply and then who are eligible and receive financial aid is close to 100%. And then number of students who were awarded, okay, sorry. And let's go down here. row I, on average, what percent of need was met of the students who were awarded any need-based aid? So again, Tulane's a generous school. They cover need-based financial aid very well. So this is saying that basically they covered 97% of what a student's need was by giving them need-based aid. We do a whole nother presentation and webinar on kind of determining your need and what that formula is. So I'm not going to go into that now, other than to say, whatever that formula calculates is what the college uses. It's not necessarily what you think you need. So there's always going to be a difference between how much money you think you need from the college versus, unfortunately, what the college calculates, which is based on the government formula. So most time it's government and a school formula. So of the eligible need that students had, Tulane gave enough financial aid to cover 97% of that need. That's important to know. You will see a big range here. There are schools, a lot of the obviously really wealthier schools. I mean, it's 100%. They're covering 100% of a student's eligible need. And then you'll see other schools that say, we'll only cover 50% of a student's eligible need, or maybe even 30 or 40%. If your family, your student might be eligible for any sort of financial aid, this number is important to know. And it's important to know as part of the research process. It's important to know before your student applies. As you can see, all this information is accessible before your student applies. I'm going to emphasize that again, because so many parents kind of after their student gets accepted says, well, how come my student didn't get the aid that we thought they were going to get? And usually they got whatever aid is listed in the common data set, but the parent didn't know about the common data set and they didn't know this information and they didn't do the research before their student applied. All of this is knowable, again, before your student applies. Okay, so and then there's information here about, here's the average size of the financial aid package given to the students in line D who were awarded any financial aid. So average package is about $65,000. That makes sense if your student is, Tulane's an expensive college, if your student has any sort of, is eligible for need-based aid and Tulane is almost covering 100% of it, then Tulane is very generous with need-based aid. Let's go to the next section, which is merit scholarships. Okay, this is section H2A, where we get a lot of information from. So row N, number of students in line A, which was the total number of freshmen and undergraduates who had no financial need. So Tulane has 416 students who enrolled in this past fall who didn't apply for, or actually they might have applied for financial aid, but they have no financial need. And they're not going to get any need-based aid from Tulane. And wait, I'm sorry, number of students who had no financial need, and who were awarded merit scholarships. That was the non-need-based aid. So actually you can calculate, and we calculate with the numbers above, you can calculate how many students have no financial need at Tulane. That's a higher number, but of those students who have no financial need, 416 of them actually still got merit scholarships. And we can look up what that actual percentage is. And average merit scholarship was $21,000. So that's not bad. A merit scholarship is given to a student, usually going to be based on their academics, and is not based on any sort of financial need. If you're a family who's not going to get need-based aid, or which is a lot of families these days, this is the way that you can reduce the cost of college, by looking at merit scholarships. So somebody's asking, can you please explain the difference between free scholarship aid versus loan aid? It seems that the school can say they met 97% of need, but it would include loans, even plus loans. So colleges consider a loan a form of need. So there are and the only two loans that or there could be a college specific loan. Some colleges actually offer their own loans, but majority of colleges are considering the federal loans, which are one is called the Student Direct Federal Loan, which is your student can take out that loan, and the other is the PLUS loan. I wasn't really clear. I don't really think, but I'll double check that when colleges include the loans in these percentages, that they're including PLUS loans, because I don't think they actually even know yet what families are taking out PLUS loans, but they do sometimes include the student loans. So meaning so your student can take out $5,500 each year, or actually in freshman year, it goes up each year after that. And so when a college sends out their financial aid information, they will assume if your student has need, they will assume that your student's going to take out the loans. Most colleges make that assumption. There are a handful of colleges that actually cover students' eligible need without loans, even without government loans. I mean, they are the most wealthiest of colleges that do that. There's probably less than 5 who do it, but majority will include the federal loan that your student can take out as kind of, as part of their need. Okay, let me jump over to something really quickly. Again, you can see there's a lot of good information here. They also talk about what types of loans that students get. And I guess I think they might have here about student loans and Parent Plus loans. But let me jump really quickly to the tool that we put together, because we think this information is so valuable, but it's a little hard for you to kind of do the raw calculations and to gather all this information across all the colleges. So we created something. Let me share to show you, which it's been very helpful for a lot of families. It's called Insights, and it's basically we license the data from Peterson's. The majority of the data here is common data set information. We do the calculations for you. We give you an interface that you can do the filtering and the sorting and creating lists based on a lot of the data that we just showed. And we actually crowdsource actual offers, which you can also look at by individual colleges. So let me sign in and show you how this looks. The reason why I explain the common data set information is because most of the data that we have in here is common data set information, and it's just important for you to understand what the data is representing and where it comes from. And I like to make sure that people understand this, because you can also do any of this research on your own and go directly to colleges' individual common data sets. But actually, I'm going to go quickly. This is a searching capability that we have that you can search. We have the databases over 3,000 colleges, all with the common data set information. We don't have all of those fields that I showed you, but we've picked out what we think are the most important fields that people should be searching on. You can search for an individual college. You can search for colleges based on major. You can search based on region. And then you can also search on cost of attendance. So if you want to see, are there colleges, let's say my budget is $40,000, can I find a college that has a cost of attendance of $30,000 to $40,000? Okay, yes, I can. And then I can look at these colleges, look at the details. I can sort them in different by other variables. I can then create a separate list for these colleges, and then I can actually sort them further. So that's one way of using the information. You can look at, show me colleges that offer merit scholarships, maybe between 20 and we'll say 80,000. So these are colleges that are offering merit scholarships. I can sort these by the average merit aid, and so now I can see these are colleges that give merit scholarships. But there's another caveat to this. So if you look at Duke is saying I have an average merit award of $77,000. Well, that is generous, right? But they're only giving it to 3% of the students who don't have any financial need. So you need to know those two pieces of numbers. What's the average merit, and what percentage of students who don't have financial need are actually being offered the money. I mean, again, this is very generous. I happen to know that Duke has a few very competitive scholarships, and if your student can win those scholarships, some of them are like full tuition, full ride scholarships. That's why this number is so high. But obviously, you can see how competitive it is, because 3% of students who don't have a financial need are getting those scholarships. So, and you can look through all of these colleges, in more detail to, see what those numbers are. So that's another way you can search for colleges. Let me clear the search here. And another way, I explained to you what percent of need met was. If you're a family who might get financial aid, you want to look at, show me all the schools that are going to meet, 95 to 100% of that need. And, these are all the schools that would do that. Let's search by need met. And so you can see these are schools that cover 100% of need if your student, is eligible for need-based aid. So that's important to look at. And then you can search by test scores. And of course, you can search by the average test score, but what's really important is you can also search by what we call the top range, which is the 75th percentile. Because if you're a student or if you're a family who wants to look for merit scholarships, you want your student to be at the top of the academic range. And so you're going to want to say, show me schools where, a 1300 to 1400 is that school's 75th percentile, because if my student is in that range, then they're likely to receive merit if that school also offers merit. So then I would then go and search these results and say, okay, show me of these 197 schools that have that high, that 1300 or 1400 75th percentile range, which of these schools also give merit? So this is how now you need to start to combine the variables. And then on this, I might layer, okay, show me the schools here that, also my student's interested in, I don't know, agricultural economics. How many of those, 13 of those schools also have that as a major? Okay, maybe I wanted to narrow it down by a state or a region. So that's how I would start to be researching all the different schools and, what the different numbers are. Let me just show you one other thing that's important. I'll pull it up for here, Susquehanna. I just happen to know we have a lot of information from them. So I mentioned crowdsourced offers. These are offers that families have shared with us over the years. So this is Susquehanna. You can see this is this year. So this 25-26, well, that's going to be the academic year that student enrolls in college for. This is the actual offer that they got from the college. So a student that was from New Jersey, had a 4.0 GPA, had an SAT of 1320, who applied early action, happened to also be a student that has an SAI, which is for financial aid purposes, less than 15,000. This student was offered $46,000 in merit scholarships. So these are, actual offers that families have shared with us, which has been really helpful. So you can gauge and get a sense of, so you can see a lot of these merit scholarships amounts are in the 40,000s. Okay, so let's quickly look. If you look at Susquehanna, what's their average merit amount? It's actually 40,000, 39,000. So the numbers that families are actually, the offers that students are actually getting is not far off from the numbers that they're sharing in their common data set. So that's one way to use the information. Another is when you student actually gets their offer, you can then compare it to other students and what other students are getting at that college. So I know I went through this really quickly. An hour goes fast. It's in the middle of the day. If anybody's interested in looking at this tool, you'll get an email about it, but the link is insights.roadtocollege.com. You can create a free account. You get to see some of the data that I showed, and you get to do some searching, but you don't get the full capacity for searching until you do a paid account, which is $24 a month if that's what you want. Or we've got other two other levels if you want to be included in our monthly sessions where we talk about all these things related to college, whether it's essays, whether it's visiting colleges, financial aid, the different calculations. And we've got like a monthly sessions with experts and myself giving, really basically teaching families about how to manage the process. Because I think it's really important that families understand how this process works and you take control of it. It's great to work with professionals, but I think it's also really important that families understand the ins and outs, because you know your student the best, you know your finances the best. If you can apply what we teach you to your situation and then ask questions, you will have a great outcome. Okay. Let me see what other questions there are. We'll send a link to this tomorrow so that you can look it over at your leisure. And there's a question here. So if $65,000 is the average financial aid package and $21,000 is the average percent amount of scholarship, is that saying that a family would then be expected to fund the remaining $40,000? Yes, that's the way you would understand that, Melanie. So if a family was not eligible for need-based aid and only got and they got the merit scholarship, which was $21,000, they would be expected to fund the difference between the $21,000 and the total cost of attendance for Tulane, which is higher than $65,000. It's probably closer to $80,000. So they would be expected to finance that gap, the merit scholarship subtracted from the total cost of attendance. And the same for the need-based family. If the need-based family gets $65,000, which is great, they're expected to finance the difference between what they got in need and what Tulane actually costs, what their total cost of attendance is. Okay, I have to jump off because I actually have another meeting and people waiting. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in the middle of the day. We will have more sessions like this. Check out the insights. Open our email, see if you want to kind of join us on any of the other memberships where we have these in-depth sessions, pretty frequently. I run them. We have a former Dean of Admissions, Terry Cowdrey, who has been amazing. I love doing these sessions with her. She has so much great information. We have other independent college counselors who also participate and teach sessions. And then we also have two college funding professionals, Luann Lee, who I've worked with for probably 6 or 7 years now, who knows a ton about financing colleges and how college aid methodologies and the calculations work. So really helpful. Again, I like to be an educated consumer, and I like other parents to be educated consumers as well. So that's the purpose of everything that we do. Okay, everybody, I am signing off, saying goodbye. I hope you have a good rest of the day. And I'm so happy a lot of you were here and could make it during the day. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.